Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. Today I'm going to have an involved and deep discussion into what happened last week in relation to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the reason why I think this is an important discussion to have is because of the impact that it's likely to have here in Australia, and particularly at the moment, the impact that it has and is likely to have in the rest of the world. And the polarisation that seems to be developing in terms of who's responsible for what and how much hate there is out there in our community and where that hate is directed and how we can best confront, I think, the hate. Now, I need to say at the beginning that I did know of Charlie Kirk. I can't say I necessarily was a follower of his. However, have heard of his views, and there would probably be zero views that I personally would agree with. That doesn't mean that I would be one who would advocate for his demise in any form. In fact, I believe that someone like Charlie Kirk had a sound contribution to make in terms of arguments that we hear from one side. And he was very convincing in terms of those arguments. Now, since his death, I have watched some clips on his Oxford debates and how he handled himself when speaking to students. And I have to come away, and I've come away from that thinking Charlie was very experienced and comprehensive in the way he dealt with students. I didn't agree with the way he went about it. When confronted, he would often say, well, I just disagree, and slam down his microphone. There's much about Charlie that probably everything I disagree with. But that doesn't mean that that person should have been assassinated. I don't believe anybody, no matter who they are, should be assassinated for their views. I believe that we should have a reasonable debate about other views, and that's what I plan to do on my show, is to provide an opportunity here for you and for me to talk about what it is that we think, to put our position forward and to be able to, I guess, muster up an argument that it at least is coherent. But we also need to have the space to disagree. And one of the things that I've often said while running my show is that it's important to understand where other people are coming from, why they believe what they believe, where those beliefs are formulated, and how we can best argue them. The problem that we have here is that Charlie Kirk is this man who had an allegiance to one side of politics. And that side of politics has decided to martyr him. Not because he was an exceptional human being. He isn't a Nelson Mandela. He isn't a Gandhi. He wasn't even a Barack Obama in terms of oration. But he was a man that simply held a set of views on the right of politics. And he did demonstrate a sense of anti-racism, anti-Semitism, and a few other obnoxious qualities that we all, or many of us, may disagree with. But what it has done, it's propelled the universe, it seems, into highlighting aspects of him that are unrealistic and which are galvanising one side of politics against the other. And the part of that I find most disturbing, I think, is that what we're hearing and seeing now is a disdain, an incredible disdain and blame being levelled at particularly the left wing of politics. Now, the person who assassinated him, there's very little known about him, and my understanding is that he's not having in-depth conversations with the FBI, that they don't know all that much about him. And what we find out from the media is that, and I'll play a clip of this in a moment from Outsiders on Sky, because this disturbs me greatly as well, is that we're endeavouring to blame one side for an event which was perpetrated by one individual. It almost seems to me like we think that, or the narrative is that the left wing of politics are the aggressors, that the left wing are those people who wish to eradicate the right. The left wing are those who are violent, and the right wing are those who are on the moral high ground. The reality is that when it comes to assassination attempts or murder of political figures, the right wing outstripped the left by, 100 to 1. So that narrative is just simply not true. So one has to wonder, why is this being developed, fostered in the way that it is? Who does that serve, and why does it serve them? How would have got written? So I'm just reading one of the comments. I'll come back to the comments. I'll wait till I've got a number of comments here, and then I'll go through them. But one of the things that does concern me, I guess, is that not only do we have the right wing propagating this, we have the extreme right, and we have people such as Elon Musk and I'll show you a quote from Elon in just a moment. But we have people like Musk calling for war. We have situations here in Australia and in UK and particularly in the US around immigration and what it is that we should be doing about immigration. Now, I know that there are many issues that we need to deal with in all of these countries. Just talking about here in Australia, we have a homeless problem, we have a mental health problem, we have a child protection problem where kids are being abused in childcare centres. We have a energy crisis. We have not enough homes being built for the number of people that want them, and people find it difficult in order to get homes. The great Australian dream of owning a home seems further and further away now than it ever has. We have climate issues, we have droughts, we have fires, we have a whole host of things that are affecting our climate and the way we choose to live. There's a shortage on the cost of living is extremely high. We know and we understand all of those issues. Yet here we are fighting about the death of one man because we're blaming that on one side versus the other. And in doing so, we never seem to be confronting the actual issues that do concern us. And that the politics become so embedded in hate that we wonder whether at any point these other issues will ever be addressed. The United States is a good example, I think, of where no matter what the issues are, whether it's about building more homes or whether it's about the cost of living in the US or climate change or whatever it's about, those issues to me are the issues that don't seem to be talked about. Particularly by Trump. They don't, it's more important for Donald Trump to change the Department of Defense to the Department of War than it is to deal with the issues that particular country is facing. I'm grateful, and people may disagree with me on this, but I'm grateful that here in Australia, a lot of the conversations about the issues that do matter, Parliament is focused on those, and they're doing whatever they can, maybe not to the satisfaction of everybody, I agree, not to my satisfaction either, but at least those issues are being addressed. Whereas in the United States, we find that the people are just incompetent. We look at JFK, And we look at some of the policies that they've implemented in regard to vaccines and being able to have these vaccines available for children and for older people. And we look at the craziness that is embedded in someone like, the guy that, like Kash Patel, who's running the FBI. If we had incompetent people like that in Australia, we'd get rid of them. In fact, I would argue that they would be people that wouldn't even have an opportunity to be able to hold those positions here. Because we look for reasonableness in this country. We look for a sense of sensibility, if you like. We don't look for people that are just sycophants to the Prime Minister in order to get those jobs. We look for people who have got integrity. Yet, in the United States, it seems to be a completely different ballgame. Hence, the politics is different. But what disturbs me most is that some elements of that politics are likely to play themselves out in Australia as well. We're now seeing them played out in the UK. We're seeing Elon Musk becoming involved and insisting perhaps that there should be a war. And what we do wind up with is we wind up with the oligarchs, those people with money who wish to have money. For some bizarre reason, money isn't enough. That they want power. They want to be able to exert their power in a way which influences their version of politics and which enhances their own version of the power that they believe they should deserve. So for some of these people, it seems to me, and particularly Elon Musk, is that the more money that he has should equal power and authority. And the bizarre thing is that people like Elon Musk would be those people that sit on top of the hill and they watch all the minions go down and do all the fighting for them. They haven't got the guts or the courage to do that themselves. They'd be imposing that upon other people to do it for them, because that's who they are. Because people like Elon Musk are cowards. It's as simple as that. Yet, it is people like Musk who are insisting that whatever the circumstances under which people are living in Britain, and I'm assuming the US and probably even Australia, is something that needs to be fought against. And so we have Elon Musk lining up with Tommy Robinson to advocate that there should be some sort of a civil war. And in the United States, they're actively now talking about a civil war. And I just think, how crazy is that? Because my belief too is that if it keeps heading down the same direction that it now is, there will be conflict. There will be people taken to the streets. The reality is that in the United States, there are certainly more Republicans with guns than there are Democrats. And another fact that just doesn't seem to be identified very often is that at the time of Charlie Kirk's death, the Democratic leaders were those that came out and with sympathy, with empathy for him, his wife and his kids, and for his followers. They understood what this moment meant and they behaved accordingly. Whereas Donald Trump chose to be able to not calm the waters but inflame them even further, to say that it's the crazy left, the bizarre, crazy, lunatic Democrats that are responsible for all of this, when there's no evidence to suggest that at all. Yet that's where it's coming from. It's a disgrace, I think, that someone like Trump and his ilk, Stephen Miller in particular, the Goebel of the Trump campaign or Trump administration, are there telling us what it is that we should be thinking in relation to this, and that we should find ways to fight back. The reality is that if this continues to fester, that there'll be rallies in Australia on September the 13th, I believe, another Australia First rally, and that'll have more and more people involved. And those people will be calling for less and less migration. And even if the government chose to reduce migration, which they're attempting to do, I believe, right at this moment, but even if they did, even if they restricted it down to 10,000 people a year, there would be people that would object to that, vehemently object to that. Those people would be determined for there not to be any immigration whatsoever. And then there will be a movement to be able to get rid of those people in Australia who simply are not white. And you know, where does that go? What's next? I can see this propelling downhill at a rate that's going to wipe out everything in its way. No matter how righteous, no matter how good, no matter how realistic and how rational the arguments might be, they will be wiped away. They'll be seen as insignificant. And as a result of that, there will be fights in the street. People will lose their lives because of this, and because of the war cries that we're getting from someone like Elon Musk. And we will be getting from influencers here in Australia as well in relation to all of this. And some of this work, though, is being highlighted by Sky News. And I'm going to play a little bit of a clip for you from Sky, which is the Outsiders program with Panahi Morrow and the other dude. And here you will see them trying to justify the involvement of the left wing in Charlie Kirk's death. And I am continually surprised at how ignorant these bastards are in the way they choose to define this event and how inaccurate they are. You know, that when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, the right wing came out with a whole lot of assumptions, particularly around the fact that trans people apparently commit most of the mass murders in the United States. I saw a statistic the other day that said the number of trans people involved in mass murders was 0.017%. And that most of the mass murders in the United States were performed by those people who were more Republican-leaning. But those facts don't seem to matter for these clowns. And this is what bemuses me, is why is it that even though all the facts might suggest something else, we wind up with a version of events which is so distorted and so disingenuous that we wonder, who are you playing to? Who is it important? What sort of moron are you wanting to have this discussion with? Because I can tell you, if you're a rational person and you look at the data and the statistics, there is a completely different narrative. But what is your agenda? Why is it important for you, and these people on Sky and on the right wing in particular, why is it important for you to present this in the way that you do? It bemuses me, to say the least. So what I'm going to do is I'll just play this bit for you, and we'll talk about it as they go through it.
Peter, this is extraordinary. We now hear that the killer, the shooter, the alleged shooter, was in a relationship. His lover was a transgender individual transitioning from male to female.
And we just need to clarify that. It so happened that the person that Tyler Robinson's was sharing a room with a person who was transitioning from male into female. Whether that was his lover, his roommate, is another issue. But however, notice that they lead with this, because this is the right wing's thing, is that if we can latch onto anything that is anti-trans, or anything different, or anybody different, if he was gay, if he had been black, or from Afghanistan or Pakistan or whatever, then that would have given credence to their beliefs about immigration or about trans people. That would have been an opportunity to be able to distort the events in a way which would have best suited them.
Email, that's the latest news, and this was the same individual that texts were sent to his so-called roommate regarding the rifle and casings. Rita Panahi.
Yes, Tyler Robinson's partner is cooperating with the FBI. He's been helpful, is what's been reported. And yeah, he is trans, is just another development. It adds an extra layer to what could have motivated this guy. But this guy, if he is the culprit...
You don't know that. Like, you know, the reader who has the brain the size of an ant seems to draw conclusions from things which just are not apparent at the time. But there again, as I said before, this sort of aligns with their narrative. So this is the way that they're going to go.
And authorities are very confident they have their man. He's told us why he's done this. There's a lot of conjecture that the left is bending over backwards, trying to cast some doubt about whether this was a politically motivated assassination, when there is zero doubt, because the killer told us why he did it. He hasn't been shy about saying why he did it. And if we don't accept...
I haven't heard... Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard anything that has identified as to why Robinson did what he did. And my understanding is he's actually not talking to the FBI. He's completely silent. So where has she got this information from? Who knows?
Reality, if we don't face up to the truth, we're not going to get past this point. And worse than trying to cast doubt about what motivated this killing are those dishonest actors. Sometimes they're just dishonest, sometimes they're stupid.
And Rita, you fit both of those categories, I hasten to add.
Don't care which one's which, but they lied. They have fabricated pictures of the suspect in a Trump shirt. They've tried to cast him as some sort of MAGA individual, Republican, just because his family happened to be church-going, religious conservatives. This guy is the black sheep of the family. The family have said, you know, he's been off the left. And I think it just shows, James, that...
And we need to say that had his family been voted Democrat, had his family been Democrat card holders and registered as Democrats, then this story would be completely different. See, this is who he is. This is why he is. But because his family were not, and they were, I think they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were registered Republicans, then, you know, this man is separate. Somehow he's been radicalised. So we get to this point, I don't know whether they talk about it here, but we certainly get to this point whereby he was supposed to have, he went to university, therefore he's corrupted by the university process. Well, actually, he did one semester, apparently, at university, and then he dropped out. So we have this link with this narrative about university and the fact that everybody that goes to university gets radicalised to the left, even though there are many people in universities who vote Liberal and who vote to the right. So I don't know where they get this from, but nevertheless, this is the focus for them at the moment.
Necessarily immunise you or protect you from this
absolutely,
poisonous doctrine.
And I mean, look, Rita, everybody out there, everybody on this...
See the poisonous doctrine? So immediately, you know, if you go to university, as I have been, and my wife and my children, they have been indoctrinated, no doubt about it.
Days when families are complicated, you have different people come from the same parents, the same environment, and just different things sort of wind up happening to them over the course of life, and that is just life. But the gaslighting, the unbelievable gaslighting that we have had.
I think so much projection takes place in this program because they are the masters of gaslighting. There's no doubt about it. They are horrible, but that's what they do.
And I see this coming from all quarters of the left. It's not just the ones who are celebrating gleefully his death. And I'm going to be talking a bit later in the program about people who've been losing their jobs as a result of this, and why that's actually not a...
Okay, so let's. So he brings up a good point. Number one is I'm horrified by those people that seem to be rejoicing in the death of another human being. That is horrible, and there's no doubt about it. It is wrong. I would never do it. If someone assassinated Donald Trump, who I think is one of the most revolting human beings on this planet, I would not be rejoicing that one iota. Everybody's life is precious, no matter who you are. It's a shame they don't think the same about the people in Gaza. But nevertheless, and it's women and children in Gaza, I find that horrible, horrible. But, and the other issue, I think, was this indoctrination into universities. And also, on top of all of that, we're finding that Charlie Kirk had this part of his Turning Point USA was about identifying lecturers and people at universities who held specific right-wing views. And that you were supposed to, people were collecting those names of those people and reporting them to the university or to some other organisation within the Trump organisation, with the view that those people should lose their jobs. So then you've got to wonder, if freedom of speech, the First Amendment in the United States, is that important to them? Why does that matter, that people may hold views that are different to their own, and that those people who hold those views should no longer hold their jobs? I find it incomprehensible as to what would motivate someone like Charlie Kirk to do that. A person who advocated for free speech, who was determined to have the opportunity to speak to as many young people as he could because he believed in free speech. Yet he set up an organisation that would dox people technically if they had views that were of a left nature. I don't understand it, but this is the contradiction and the hypocrisy that sits around this that I find specifically distressing. Can't they see? Why are they so friggin' ignorant that they can't see the hypocrisy that sits around some of the positions that they take? They want free speech. Everybody should have the right to say whatever they want to say. This is Charlie Kirk's thing. He had the ability to do that. He had a gift to do that. He had the organisation that earned him millions of dollars. He was influential in terms of having Donald Trump elected in last year. Yet, his own organisation was wanting to dox people who held different views, who had an opinion that was counter to theirs. I don't understand it. I think it's a load of bullshit, and it needs to be called out. But these people on Outsiders, they think that this is kind of okay for some bizarre reason, which I don't understand.
A bad thing, but this idea that, oh well, and you see these posts, I see them all the time. He was a conservative. He was brought up a Mormon. He grew up in Utah. His parents were cops. This, that, the other thing. You know, to suggest.
Actually, scary enough, his mother was a social worker, one of my ilk, one of my kind, and I reckon the parents who turned him in did the right thing, but God, they must be disappointed.
Just that, well, every single one of these things says, except that, you know, even The Guardian. So when you read into The Guardian, and they're telling the truth about it, you know this is the truth. They said they talked to people who were friends.
I like that. Whenever you read in The Guardian, who's their nemesis, I hasten to add, you read in The Guardian, you know it's the truth. When The Guardian calls you dudes out, it must be the truth as well. But I know. Just a sideline.
The family, they said he was incredibly radicalized. They said that a few years ago he really started to, and I think, well, you know, we need to talk about universities and just what's happening on our university campuses right now, that people get so radicalized on them. But that he talked about Charlie Kirk, he talked about the right, he talked about fascism, he talked about trans stuff. Now we know why there's an angle on the transgender side there, because of course if he'd had this relationship. But it is anything, they will do anything they can to prevent themselves owning the fact. And I'll tell you, we got to be careful, because I'm not somebody who subscribes to the words equals violence thing. That's the left thing. But these are
the left thing that words equal violence. Well, God, I just think if we were to define or use a synonym for moron, I guess we could change it to moro. Seriously.
Same people who have been pumping people, everybody through this message that Donald Trump is a fascist, people like Charlie Kirk are fascists, they are an imminent threat to democracy, the democratic way of life, the American republic, freedom, liberty, all of these things.
Well, when you say...
And when they do that, that creates the existential threat, that creates a circumstance where this happens.
I don't think we have to be shy about saying that at all. There's clear incitement for this crime. Yeah. There's clear incitement for the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. There's clear incitement when you say words of violence, you rationalise responding with violence.
Now, I'm going to finish at that, because I think Rita's a good one to finish on, because she's a clown, to say the least. But, you know, when one thinks about incitement of violence in the United States, and one reflects on the things that Donald Trump says about the left, the ICE raids in the US, the placing of the army in states, the fact that he defies anything that the courts put forward, the fact that he is heading the country towards an autocracy. There is no disputing any of that, and because of that, because of the direction that the United States is going, there are a lot of crazy people in the United States, and let's not forget that they have twice as many guns as they do people. So, and you know, not all the 300 million people in the United States hold guns. A lot of people hold multiple guns. So, you know, when you think about the degree of violence in the United States and the fact that they refuse to be able to deal with that issue because they still want guns, and that the week before Charlie was assassinated, there was another school shooting, and no mention of that by Donald Trump, because he doesn't care about kids. He just cares about his own ass, and he cares about how he looks. You know, which is bizarre, given that most presidents, if I can say all presidents prior to Trump, would have made some sort of statement about a school shooting. And why is it in the United States that in the US, they're the only country in the world that has school shootings? You know, what's this thing about, you know, about shooting up schools and killing kids? What does that tell us about the United States? What a horrible, horrible place that it is. You know, if I wanted to go to the United States now because of my social media posts, I wouldn't even be granted a visa, which is just as well, because I don't plan to go there. But I wouldn't. Is that freedom of speech? No. Freedom of speech has gone in the United States. I think we need to declare it dead. It's gone. And that, eventually, they will be arresting politicians for their conversations, for the things that they say that are anti-Trump and anti-MACA. They'll be closing down, and they already started to close down certain radio and television services like NPR. So they will be looking for, and this is where autocracies win, when they can take over the narrative, dominate what people are saying and how they're saying it, when they can find ways to, cancel people like Stephen Colbert. Even though, sideline, Stephen Colbert first time got an Emmy, which was the arts institutes, the the artists, the filmmakers, all saying, well, look, bugger you, Donald Trump, because you've cancelled this bloke, we're going to give him an Emmy. Go them. And rightfully deserved, I would suggest. But there needs to be this pushback. And somewhere, sometime, someone has to push back. Now, the other day, I did talk about how this is likely to impact Australia. I just want to touch upon this a little bit. So for those of you that didn't see my post, it was concerning an organisation called Turning Point Australia. Now, Turning Point US, there's Turning Point US, which was Charlie Kirk's organisation, and there was an organisation, Turning Point UK, obviously UK's, and we had one called Turning Point Australia. Now, when Charlie Kirk first died, I came across Turning Point Australia, and I came across, I don't know if I've got him here, I'm trying to find his name. I will endeavour to do so. So anyway, I forgot his name now, bugger it. Anyway, no, can't find it. So when I came across, so I'll bring up this site. So this is where at Turning Point Australia, we fight for individual freedoms against big government and special interests. And I think that's fair enough. I'm not going to object to that. But they have the same ethos as did Charlie. And the point I wanted to make is when I first looked them up, this dude here has a site, a YouTube channel, of which he had 460 subscribers. That was almost the day that Charlie had been assassinated. Within a few days after that site had grown to over 14,000. In an interview he did with Sky News, which I also posted about, he bragged that his Facebook page went from 100,000 followers to 200,000 followers. My point is that there's a growing interest in people like, or organisations like Turning Point Australia. And of course, the interest here is based on the fact that this is Charlie Kirk's organisation. Now, whether or not these people are expressing the same sense of outrage that Charlie Kirk expressed, I do not know. But I know that they're fighting for freedom, as it says here on this page, that they will be at these Australia First rallies. They will be advocating for changes to immigration. They will be talking about universities and the fact that universities are obviously indoctrinating young people into thinking more like left-wing activists. So we know all of this stuff is going to happen. And we know now that they have increased their presence in Australia. And I'm very wary about the degree to which this presence will take hold and who it will start to influence and how they will attempt to radicalise those people who have some inklings, or some inclination, I should say, towards their specific beliefs. That is what's going to happen. And this will be an organisation that people will grab onto because of Charlie Kirk. And it doesn't scare me, but what it does say is that we need to find a way to push back against some of these things, which is what I plan to do. So in relation to people being sacked, I wanted to bring up this item for you. So Washington Post columnist says she was fired over post after Charlie Kirk's killing. Washington Post columnist Karen Attea says she has been fired from the newspaper over social media posts about gun control and race in the aftermath of far-right commentator Charlie Kirk's killing. Attea, 39, recounted in a Substack post that she had been dropped as a Post columnist after 11 years for speaking out against political voice, racial double standards, and America's apathy towards guns. The post, she wrote, accused my measured blue sky posts of being unacceptable, gross misconduct, and of endangering the physical safety of colleagues charges without evidence, which I reject completely as false. She continued, they rushed to fire me without even a conversation. This was not only a hasty overreach, but a violation of the very standards of journalistic fairness and rigour the Post claims to uphold. Just down here, the Bezos founded Amazon contributed $1 million to the fund for the inauguration of the second president, Donald Trump, for whom Kirk was a close ally, and the Post decided to forego endorsing a candidate in the November election won by Trump. A Republican, after newspaper's editorial board had voted to endorse Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. So the point is that places like the Post and others are looking to ingratiate themselves to Trump in the best way that they can. And one way of doing that is to demonstrate your loyalty by getting rid of those people that hold counter views to the administration. That's what they're doing. And believe me, it is dangerous. And in another post, this one, J.D. Vance threatens crackdown on far-left groups after Charlie Kirk's shooting. J.D. Vance assailed what he called the far left and its increased tolerance for violence while guest hosting Charlie Kirk's podcast on Monday, saying the administration will be working to dismantle groups who celebrate Kirk's death and political violence against their opponents. I don't support any of that notion around celebrating Charlie's death at all. I agree. But I don't suggest that we find ways to punish people for doing that, particularly when they're acting within the law and abiding by freedom of speech, I guess. So Vance hosted the podcast from his office, high-profile member of the Trump administration, and some of Kirk's long-time friends in the movement, including Tucker Carlson and Trump advisor Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, the most awful man on this planet. The administration will be working to do that in the coming months and would explore every option to bring real unity to our country and to stop those who would kill their fellow Americans because they don't like what they say. He says, with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have to have the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks, Miller said, adding that they would do this in Charlie's name. So this is more than just those people that go out and do stupid things like celebrate Charlie's death. I don't agree with that at all. But to go out after them, punish them, and to lock them up contravenes everything that America is supposed to stand for. Yet that is what they're doing. So he refers to them as he believes there's a vast domestic terror movement. There's Miller, pointing to what he said were organised doxing campaigns, the organised riots, the organised street violence, the organised campaigns of dehumanisation, vilification, posting people's addresses, combating that with messaging designed to trigger, incite violence, and the actual organised cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. The reality is that most of that violence doesn't happen from the left. Most of that violence, in fact, happens on the right. So in another post in relation to Stephen Miller, this is worth noting as well. White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller, vowed Monday to use the killing to target a vast domestic terror movement, as I've just said, of left-wing political organisations that he said without evidence had led to the conservative activist assassination last week. Let's just focus on that. It was without evidence. There's nothing to prove any of that. The thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion, but focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause, is one of the most important agents of change in human history. So let's focus on that for a bit. The thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage, I don't know where he gets this from, is not a productive emotion, but focused anger the anger that Steve Miller and the administration are going to impose upon the rest of Americans, that's important. Righteous anger, directed for a just cause, is one of the most important agents of change in human history. So they are going to become angry. And Miller went on to say, uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So they're just look at the language. So they're terrorist networks. So this is the direction. This is the direction that the United States is going in. Stand back, watch, because it's going to be a disaster. And the people that will suffer from this will be those people who have an opinion, a diverse opinion, a different opinion to the administration, but are going to find that they're in the firing arms, that they're the targets for the administration. So it's people. If I was in the United States, it'd be people like me that would be a target. Be people like the Young Turks, people like, and organisations like MSNBC, CNN, and others, and PBS. People that not only hold a different view, but tell the truth. They're the ones that are going to be targeted. Vance is worse than Trump for careful and be careful what you wish for, says Hellocentric. Look, thanks for everybody that's come online. It's been great to know that you're all there doing your thing. I haven't had a chance to go through this. Sean, thanks, Sean. Always good to see Sean there. Sean says, Trump makes up facts and the right-wing media reinforces them. Also, right-wing figures repeat the made-up facts, which also reinforce the BS. And that is so true, mate. I can assure you that is so true. Some interesting discussions taking place, and there's quite a lot of you. So thanks very much for all of that. It's all bizarre, says D. 300 million died of drug overdose last year. So, that's right. That was funny. I'll put this one up. I'll get this one up too. Yesterday, Trump said 300 million died of drug overdoses last year. So the population of America must be 40 million, and 80 million voted for Trump. Yeah, I saw that too. And I had to laugh. That was funny. Yeah, lots of response, lots of conversation going on. So keep the conversation going. It's really important that I continue to do these posts. Now, I also do a post with Avery on Thursdays, Australian Central Standard Time, at 3 o'clock. So if you want to get involved in the conversation then, hear particularly what Avery has to say, that is the time to do so. In the meantime, subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell for further notifications. And I just want to thank all of you that got online. I really do appreciate it. And look forward to catching up to you real soon. In the meantime, take care. And more importantly, be safe.